Okay, I'm going to start with an apology. I have no, properly prospectively designed assessment on this class yet. I will tell you about some retrospective looks that have generated some hypotheses that we're going to test this next fall on what we've done with the online class, and more importantly, how the online class is going to be used in my residence-based class. I've been the instructor in charge for the past 2 years for a class called 3091. It's a Introduction to Solid-State Chemistry. The origin of the course is in the late 60s at MIT, where I think by the early 70s it became one of the GIR options, General Institute Requirement options for chemistry. So there are 2 ways you can fulfill your chemistry requirement at MIT. You can take solution-based chemistry, or you can take 3091. I've been at MIT 27 years, and I've worked with the course that entire time, not as the instructor, but as one of the TAs. When I started at MIT, over half the recitations were covered by faculty members. And so this was an opportunity for freshmen at MIT to interact in a much smaller setting with faculty, and so we have a lot of faculty involved with the course. The material is very easy, and so you can concentrate as a faculty member with interacting with freshmen. I'm not going to say a whole lot about the topics in the course. I'm going to concentrate more on what the delivery is. But I will say a little bit about, this is the only slide on the material in the course. The hypothesis around the course is that it's easier to learn, understand, and most importantly, use chemical principles if you can relate it to the things around you, the solids around you. And the underlying theme for the course is that the chemical bond determines properties of materials. So we look at semiconductors, metals, polymers, semi-solids. We do a molecular aggregation topic, micelles, that sort of thing, lipids. We talk about how the chemical bond relates to things like the electrical, mechanical, optical properties of those materials. So everything from band gaps to elasticity, plasticity, those types of things. And we can do demonstrations and then relate them to a chemical bond in all cases. That's the objective. It's an engineering course. It is not a science course. We are assessing students not on what they know, but what they can do. So they do a lot of calculations. And that turns out to be an advantage for an online course, because quickly the things that you'll see in many online courses that are multiple choice become, okay, calculate the number. And a computer can really do a great assessment of whether they're putting in the right number. I think it was kind of unique as a chemistry course across the nation. There are a couple people who have tried to emulate this, but I don't know whether it is really, what was the word yesterday, transportable. I think a lot of this is MIT students. Now, I have the same requirements as the other chemistry course. I have to make sure that at the end of my course, they can take any major at MIT. So we each have a punch list of skills that the students have to have. Acid-base reactions, you go down the similar list. And plus, I have about 30% more that are not on their list. And that's because, well, let's face it, my students come in asking me, okay, Professor Cima, how is this class going to help me build a better robot? That's right. My students, on average, they're an electrical engineer, they're a mechanical engineer. They're going to use chemistry in a different way than a chemistry major would. And, but I want them to know and use those chemical principles. And I follow them through their career at MIT. I see them in the 2009 competition, which is product design. I go to that product design. They're seniors in mechanical engineering, and I check to see if the chemical principles they're pitching actually are right. And it's kind of fun to see them actually use the concepts of 3091. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say about the class. The edX platform. It's nothing like online courseware. I'm going to do a little demonstration. Some of you may have been on it. I apologize if it's new to you, but I'm going to use some jargon that unless I show it to you, it's not going to make any sense. There's no such thing as a 50-minute lecture on edX. At most, there's 10-minute lecture segments on a single concept, or a screencast, like a Sol Khan kind of thing. There are homeworks, exams, and finals. It is a course. In other words, there's a whole cohort of students that start at the same time and end at the same time. And they are working together. So you don't go into this asynchronously. So you really are working together. The edX, whenever you see an X behind the number at MIT, it means that it's a certificate earning course. It is not a credit course. And it's free. The other thing is the ground rules from the MIT perspective were that these are going to not be dumbed down in any way. They're going to be as if they were MIT students that were taking the course. So the intellectual content is exactly the same as the MIT course that it's based on. So let's see. I think the next one. So you're going to switch me to this so I can. And now I'm going to really. So this is what a typical learning sequence looks like. So this is, what is this one? Band theory of solids. So you'll see this one has a lecture segment. This one's about 7 minutes long. They're usually longer at the intro. Over here is a transcription. You can scroll down to see something you want to see, and it goes right to that point in the video. It's a really cool tool. The other thing that's really useful, if you're tired of me talking at particular speed, you can speed it up. And it's actually perfectly legible. So students really use this 1.5 speed. Exactly. No, you can slow it down too, but that's only for the English as a second language type folks. Down here, there's a discussion forum for that video, so you can see people that have posted, questions and answers, and all kinds of things. They captured from the web. Okay, if that's true, why is this? Then what'll typically happen is there's a very short assessment on that concept following it. And this is graded automatically, so you can see the answer right there. This is not meant to be detailed calculation. It's just to say, do a reality check. Did I understand what's there? And then there's, let's see, something like this will follow in the sequence. So this is a screencast, which I find actually more effective so this is something, okay, now that we've talked about connectivity, how it's related to molecular orbitals, can you do something with a conductivity or a resistivity? And we, I show an example here. And I find these particularly effective. I mentioned to folks yesterday that I'll go back now that I've sort of explained this. What I learned in this is that if you give me a piece of chalk and stand me in front of a blackboard, I am instantly lecturing. I've done it for over 25 years. If you put me in my office in front of a tablet and I'm by myself, I've got headphones on, and I'm doing a screencast, it's as if the student is standing over my shoulder. And so the style, it's really great to follow a lecture segment with something like that because the words I use, the tone in my voice, everything is different. So when you go through a lecture sequence or a learning sequence like that, it doesn't get monotonous. It's more interesting. So why do these online courses? For MIT, it was this bottom reason here. So you probably have read that research pretty consistently shows over a large variety of courses that learning outcomes for an online version of a residence-based course come out to be pretty much the same. So there wouldn't be an advantage then to doing this, except that similar studies show that, and many of these studies show that if you combine these, you actually do better than each. And that was the hypothesis that behind the major investment MIT and Harvard made, was that if we built this, eventually we could incorporate them into the residence-based course, and that'll be my job next fall for this. So I also get a lot of questions about what's involved in making one of these. So I took very careful notes and records through the development of this course. It actually began less than a year ago in 2012, June of 2012, when I got a call from Eric Grimson, our chancellor, asking me whether I would take one of these courses, or take my course and turn it into an edX course. And my first question was, is somebody going to help me? Because you know, when he described what it was, I had no idea what it was. You know, I could see that there was a huge amount of work involved, and boy, was it. So what I did was I spent the bulk of the summer, you know, really getting ready for this. One TA over the summer, a full-time edX person, and an additional half-time edX person. I had production and engineering folks, so production meaning pretty much a full-time video editor. 1.5 engineers, these are software people that help me design the assessment tools necessary for the course, design and build and test. I had a part-time admin support. I had 5 forum moderators when the course was on, so these are like the equivalent of TAs. The forum is the discussion section. So I get up most mornings and go on the forum and answer questions. The students really like it that the professor is answering questions. And it doesn't take long. I can stay up on top of it, but we have 5 people to really answer all these questions. Over the course of the semester, this was surprising to me, we developed some community TAs. These are unpaid people throughout the world that are really good, and they answer questions. So we watch them and we change their color, you know, the color that appears when they put an answer in. And in fact, one of these, Kathy, I don't even know her real name, but I just know her handle. We asked her back this term to be a TA, and she's been a great consultant on this. Turns out she's a high school chemistry teacher in the UK and has recruited this term, I think 6 of her students in her high school to be on the course. And then we have beta checkers. So one thing you don't want to do is send out a test to 30,000 people that has a mistake in it. Oh God! So we do a lot of beta checking. Now all this work was in a situation where I actually had a lot of the things already that I needed. So we had really high quality video because my lectures are videoed. You can play them. They're digitized, and you can play them at any time from anywhere. And so those were mostly from the 2011 lectures. And so we could take those and convert them into 330 lecture segments, which were then, we didn't end up using 50. The thing we didn't have were these screencasts. So I did over 60 screencasts over the course of the summer and early part of the fall, and which was a ton of work. In addition, we had produced with the Dreyfus Grant 6 really high quality mini docs, 5-minute mini docs on a variety of things. So one was glass transition temperature and elastomers, and we did a segment on the shuttle disaster and its relationship to temperature and the change from elastomeric to glass-like behavior with the O-rings. And that's an example of the kind of thing we did there, just to sort of enrich the course. So we had a lot of video already, and it still took all this work. So I don't know what you'd do if you started with nothing. Oh, in fact, I do know. I heard the numbers the other day for biology, Eric Lander's course at MIT. They had 27 people working on that course to get it up and running, which is now up and running and is very well received. Now, you'll notice we launched it in October 15th, mid-October, instead of beginning of the semester, and that was planned. The reason was we didn't want it to contaminate my residence-based course, which obviously begins in September. This course we'd put up a week at a time, and it was always like 6 weeks behind the regular course. So I wanted to not have my students register on this and that sort of thing, because I didn't want to contaminate it. I will say what I was doing, though, because I had them, the rough cuts for the screencasts, I was posting on my course website to get their immediate reaction to them, and I learned a lot in that process. So there was some contamination in doing this. Okay, student participation. So we had, actually this was an old number, by the end it was about 29,000 people registered for the course. But as in most of these courses, only a small number actually take tests. 10% is very typical. So we needed to learn what these people were doing, and it turns out when you log on to an edX course, every keystroke that you make, we record. What key and when you hit it. So we could do things like this. So these are the small number that are actually taking the exams through the course. It turns out there's about 15,000 students here that were participants here that were using the material all the way through the semester. And what we think is the bulk of these people are actually taking a chemistry course, and they're using this to supplement. So why would they take my test when they got to do another test? And that's.
How do you know that?
Well, we followed up with a exit survey. I know that, how do I know that that's really representative of all these people? Well, I don't. There's only so many surveys you can do before people get surveyed, out of their brain. So, but that's our hypothesis, and that's one of the things we're checking this term is how many of these folks actually are taking another chemistry course. I did do, exit surveys. Oh, no, sorry, that's the wrong slide. So representation of students. Turns out that there were a lot of students. There were 13% were graduate students, 29% were university students, almost 10% were high school students. And this one didn't surprise me too much because, a lot of people want to find out what an MIT course is like. And so they've always used OCW for that. This is just another way to do it. I learned a lot of interesting things there. For example, one anecdote, there was a mother in Colorado, rural part of Colorado, that got interested, knew one of her 3 teenage sons was interested in science, and she read about this course in August. She and one of her sons actually went to the library and started reading the background material. October starts. She and her son took the course together. They were enjoying it so much that the 2 other sons registered for the course and took it, which I thought was a great story. The thing that surprised me the most was the large number of teachers, and I corresponded with many of these teachers. 3% were K-12 teachers, but it's almost 9% were teachers of all types. So we had people that were actually, professors at community colleges and things like that were taking a course. Here they were trying to do enrichment. So, and these high school teachers, there was one from a high school in Sacramento, California. She corresponded with me. She just loved the course. She actually sent me some chocolates at the end of the course. You can believe that? There was one in Ohio, there was one in Australia, a girls' school in Australia, and I already mentioned Cath B in the United Kingdom. I thought it was, this was a pleasant surprise, and I've actually said, you know, this may be an opportunity for professional development, doing courses designed to meet requirements for professional development of high school chemistry teachers. And I've got a pitch to the NSF to do that sort of thing because you know, we could design this appropriately to actually allow them to get those professional development credits. Okay, so here's my retrospective look at outcomes. You know, I have to tell you that this was a really tough thing to do, right? So what I did was I designed the residence-based final in such a way that a select group of measurements could be done also on the online final. And so here they are. There are various types of calculations that you would do in a 3091 class. So weak acid titration, acidity of solids, surface energy, you know, things like that. And they're all calculation-based. And a 3091 problem typically is you'll sit down and you might have to do 2 calculations and then a 3rd calculation to get the answer. And of course, when I'm grading that, I can see what the student's done wrong, and I can give them partial credit. So that's something I can't do online. So the online class questions are a bit different. Because we can't give partial credit, we have to have the student figure out in an iterative way what they're doing wrong. So in other words, we give them 3 tries to get the bottom line answer. We don't tell them, we just say, you put in the answer and it says, it's wrong. Oh, so they go back and they figure out, they get 3 tries, and after 3 tries, you're out. You know, 3 tries, you're out. 3 strikes, you're out. And so there's different boundary conditions on these tests. The other thing is, the online test has an infinite amount of time. Not an infinite amount of time, we typically give them a weekend. In the residence-based class, if it's a monthly exam, they come in, they get 50 minutes to do their 5 problems. So how do we control for some of these things? Can't control for all of them, but some of them. So in the class, what we did was we went back and we took the finals and we recorded the number of people that got the bottom line number right. We ignored the partial credit that they got. What fraction got the bottom line number? On the online, what we did was we recorded the people that got the number right the first time. And that's what we were going to compare. Now, we couldn't control for the time, and we couldn't control for closed book, open book. But if you've ever seen any of my exams, closed book, open book does not make any difference, I guarantee you. So it's the time that's different. Now, for a lot of these, the stars are not here, but there are some of these that are statistically significant. These 3, this one, and I think this one on diffraction. Sorry, I don't know what happened to the stars, but so it was clear that statistically significant, skills were measured, better skills were measured in the online class than the residence-based class. And so that was troubling for me for 2 reasons. In September, I got interviewed by the tech, the MIT paper, and they asked me, what I think is going to be the disadvantage. And I said, the disadvantage is there's no way I can do an online assessment of a student as well as I can if the student's in front of me. And here it was, oh my God, it's coming out. Maybe exactly the opposite. Why do I say that? Well, I didn't believe these students were any better. And to my horror, when I went back and looked at the final exam, to actually look at it, went back, it's not that these students didn't have the answer. They didn't write down anything. And it hit me, they did exactly what I told them to do. Walked into the exam and I'd say, look through the entire exam and do the problems you can do. And in that constrained amount of time, they didn't get to me. So here it was, I was sort of, now my hypothesis is it's just the opposite, that maybe I can do better assessment of students online than I can in a time-constrained, quiz-type format. And this is, again, it's an exit survey of the students in edX. Now, these are the people that got to the end and opted to fill out the survey. But, I do not get teaching reviews like this. 27% best course I've ever taken, great course. This was not a huge number of responders, 1,900 responders. But still, it's not bad, I don't get them like that. Okay, so there are a lot of new tools that have to be built to really, there's a lot of things we're doing. We have drag and drop. We actually have an AI system you can do. We're testing it now. The first test didn't come out too good, but where you can write 5 sentences, I grade 100 of them, and then the computer tries to grade the rest of them. It's cool, but there's some issues. It's mostly learning how to ask the right question that it can do, and we're still trying to develop that. I'll tell you about the 3091 problem bank here that we've started building, and it'll be used in my class. And then, of course, integration of this material with the resin space. How do we maximize the benefit of this content and assessment tools? Should online content be required? Should the change I make in the fall be a large change or a small change? So I went around, it's a GIR, so this is a highly political thing at MIT. So there's a lot of constituencies I had to satisfy and get their input. I did a departmental retreat. I did our undergraduate committee. I did our local material science undergraduates. I contacted all the students for the past 2 years. Or no, this is their course evaluations. Then I did a survey, which was highly responded. I think it's like 60% response on assessment. I had 4 different proposed changes. And am I done? Yeah, I'm done. Okay. So the experiment is the following. We are going to use all this material as the text. There will be no text for the class. What's online will be the text. I'm going to take advantage of that because we've never had a text for this class. It's been all this stuff. We have our normal 2 hours of recitation a week. There are going to be 37 online proctored quizzes. We are going to take over a Athena work cluster, 35 terminals every night from 7 to 10. You can go in and do an assessment. There'll be a TA there. You can go in and do an assessment. If you don't pass it, you can come back the next day and do it again. No time constraint. If you don't pass, come back and do it. And this is what we're doing. Now, the assessment will not be the same. It's 30 questions in that computer. Each one is randomly selected for that particular acid-base reaction. And the numbers within the problem are randomized. So each time you sit down, you get a different problem. And I've tested this online. The last midterm on the online class, no 2 of the thousands of students that took it got the same exam, which was interesting. And there was no hiccups. I couldn't believe it. So anyway, that's all I wanted to say. Thanks.